Cannabis investing continues to be a topic of conversation across a wide range of communities. For more now on what's hot and what's not, we're joined by Patrick Morton from Cannabis Invest UK. Patrick, good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, what do you do within the sector?
Well, my company, Cannabis Invest UK, is focused on engaging the UK investment community with global cannabis companies. This region in general, including Europe, is at the very early stages of opening up the cannabis industry. There are mature markets elsewhere in the world with companies who are dying to get involved here, access investors, as well as access the market in general, and my company sort of helps with that.
Yeah, one of the news headlines we've seen over the last couple of years or so has been the attractiveness of this market, particularly to North America. Whereabouts is the hottest area at the moment that remains the hottest area to be involved with?
Well, I would say the U.S. is at the moment, state by state, probably the hottest market. It's the largest by consumption in the world, and it has a number of catalysts kind of in and around the past couple of years with state-by-state efforts to legalize medical first, followed by recreational cannabis access in many cases. Canada has been a major kind of news story for the last year because it's been the first G7 country to legalize both medical and recreational nationwide. That happened in October last year. So a ton of investment has happened into both of those countries, but I think now those markets are maturing and the focus is shifting towards Europe. So we're really kind of at an exciting time here.
Do you see Europe as following the model of North America, or do you see a separate, more inventive model coming up here as a sort of a different angle on it?
Well, I personally do. I think a lot of people might say, no, Europe will be very unique and each country will follow its own path. But I think what will inspire that path is regulators here watching what has happened with legalization in North America and realizing it's not that risky. There aren't any negative public health outcomes. You only see a positive outcome in terms of tax revenues, job creation, and actually an improvement overall in public health because people aren't using heavier drugs when they have access to cannabis. They'll reduce their consumption of alcohol, which has a lot of negative impacts on health. Cannabis doesn't have those impacts. Over time, Europe will see that data and see that there isn't a downside, and I think we'll follow the path that North America has taken, which is, in general terms, institute a heavily regulated medical access program for specific illnesses, follow the patients and see what happens to them health-wise, and then once it becomes clear that there aren't any downsides, the momentum for recreational access will come. And I think we're still very, very early days to talk recreational in Europe, but over time, I think sort of 5-year view that will happen.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying, aren't I, according to your research, but in the UK, the medical side was legalised here in the UK in November last year, wasn't it? How are things moving in that direction? Because we've still got headlines about some people having to import certain forms of cannabis oil in order to treat their children and so forth, and that very negative connotations for the sector.
Right, yeah, well, the story in the UK has been fits and starts. So for the last 2 years, up until June 2018, there was very little progress on legalization. And then a couple of very sad stories with UK families not having access for children to get access to cannabis medicine really kind of grabbed the headlines here. The Home Office did the right thing and sort of change the regulation on an emergency basis. And as of November 1st, there is a medical access program in the UK, but it's very restrictive and only a few prescriptions have been given out. So we still actually need years of education on all sides, including in the medical community, for doctors to be comfortable and to understand what illnesses cannabis can be treated for, what are the dangers, and how safe is it in general. So we had no progress for a long time. A massive improvement from June until November last year, and now we're realizing, okay, we still need to keep working to get to really streamline access for patients. Because, like, for instance, the last number I heard was that there had been only 16 prescriptions written for cannabis in the UK since November 1st. There would be hundreds of thousands of users, without a doubt, who would sign up tomorrow if they could. So educating all stakeholders is really important to get those people access to medicine.
Just give us some perspective as to how big this market is. How big is it in North America, and what can we expect in Europe, given what's happened over there?
Well, arguably, so there's tons of analysis going into it. The estimates range for North America, I would say, from 60 billion of US dollar sales potential annually for Canada and the US to well over 100 billion. By population, Europe is about double the size of both Canada and the U.S. combined. So the market potential, when you just assume the same usage statistics and the same general cultural factors, which isn't a totally fair assumption comparing the U.S. to Europe, but you're easily talking well over $100 billion here, probably 200 or more. And none of that is being captured by the clean, legal market right now. It's all going to organized crime, unsafe products, et cetera.
And of course, assuming that it does roll out as you expect, as you say, it does actually overcome the problems with crime, especially in this particular area. But what I want to move on to is about the regulation. How quickly can regulation be rolled out here to allow these companies to do what you believe they're capable of doing?
So the story in Canada, I think, is really useful here. We've had medical access for the better part of 18, 19 years. The first 10 years, there was very little activity. And about 5 years ago, the rules were changed to allow private companies to really get involved in the market. So the control of the supply chain was opened up. And that had a really interesting impact. A ton of investment came into the sector, and the demand perked up as well. And so I think, we don't need 20 years to have that realization in the UK. I think it's really important to engage both regulators, the medical community, and the private sector to get everyone working together to get people access to clean, safe products. So that process here, again, with the experience and having been able to watch what has happened in North America, I don't think we'll have anything near 20 years of a lead time, but it definitely will take time to get those three stakeholders involved.
Do you think any of the companies that are currently listed will be the main movers as we roll out across Europe, or do you think we'll see new companies come along which perhaps maybe might actually end up taking the lead?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. There's 250 or so publicly listed companies in North America, of which the top 10 comprise probably 60 to 80% of the market cap. Those companies are tens of billions of dollars. They have a pretty massive head start. They have big time balance sheets, and they have product knowledge, teams globally that are establishing businesses around the world. That being said, I think the engagement with existing industries that are cannabis related, so companies involved in alcohol, tobacco, pharmaceuticals, those companies, I think, are watching it closely. A few cornerstone investments have already happened, but I think they have the ability, unmatched, to really dominate going forward if and when they choose to. So the leaderboard right now, I don't think, it's kind of like the car industry in 1906. You have hundreds of companies, of which who will be the long-term leader, it remains to be seen.
Any names you're looking for in terms of companies that perhaps maybe under the radar at the moment that aren't even listed?
Well, in Europe, in the UK, there's a really exciting startup scene, and I think two companies who are approaching a listing event in the UK that we've talked about are EMMAC Life Sciences, EMMAC, and a company called ECH, European Cannabis Holdings. Those two companies are, really developing professional management teams and business models to produce safe medical cannabis products and to engage with regulators and develop the distribution networks for European cannabis products. And those
are you invested in either of those two companies?
I'm not at the moment, no. And my company, we don't take stakes in our clients. We kind of perform advisory role primarily.
Okay, I just want to bring up one chart, GW Pharmaceuticals. People that invested here in the UK market might have heard of this company. The reason why I brought this company up is because it was listed here in the UK, but it seems to have moved to the States. Why is that? And do you think this is a problem that we could well end up facing with some of these new startups that we're going to get to market?
GW is a unique company. They're a pioneer in this industry. They've developed the world's first real cannabis medicines with clinical trials, a true scientific approach to it over the last 15 years. They stand apart from the rest of the industry, which are cultivators and health and wellness or nutraceutical products. GW, as they developed their two primary cannabis medicines, it just so happened that the market for those medicines was in the US.
Oh, right, okay.
The regulators primarily that they were engaged with and their shareholders were in the US, so they sort of shifted their focus to that market. But their production facility is here. The UK is the world's leader, believe it or not, in the production of medical cannabis. We have the largest production facilities in terms of cultivation as well. So I think that's a unique case where they migrated to the US. But I would not say that's a theme to be worried about if you're a UK investor. If anything, I think there's going to be a flood of investment and listings here.
Yeah. Just one final question. Potentially, how big could this market become in terms of some of the sectors we know of today?
Well, I always talk about alcohol and tobacco, which globally are each worth between $500 billion and $1 trillion a year. And cannabis is similar in some ways to each of those industries, but is far different in the sense that it's got incredible indications for effectiveness for treatment of all different sorts of health problems. So not only could you see it compete with tobacco and alcohol, but also with painkillers, anti-anxiety medicines, anti-cancer, like almost every health problem known to man, there's potentially some use with cannabis. So I think it's $1 trillion plus industry over the next 10 years.
Fascinating market, very early stages across here, at least on this side of the Atlantic. But Patrick, in the meantime, thanks indeed for joining us. Patrick Morton from Cannabis Invest UK.